Hello, hello. Welcome to this week's episode of Soundtrack of Your Life. You know what this show's all about now. I say the same thing all the time, but just in case you're new to the show, this is where you get to share stories about people, moments, events, scenarios, times in your life that have interspersed with music in the form of songs, albums, bands, soundtracks, theme tunes. Anything goes, really, because we've all got stories to share when it comes to that. So this is the show where you can come on and share them all with us. My guest on this week's show is Matt Travis. Matt is another coach that's in my network, and we've recently been connected together by a mutual friend, Brian Campbell, who was on a previous episode. But as soon as Matt and I spoke to each other, it was clear that we had a really great rapport. We share similar things in what we talk about in our coaching space in regards to mindset and self-development and the subconscious. And he then mentioned that music was a huge part of his life and has a massive impact on him, has helped him through some challenging times. And so much to the extent where he basically guessed the name of the podcast, where he said, it feels like music has always built up as a soundtrack to my life. And I went, oh, that's pretty much the name of my podcast. Like, I don't know where that came from. So he just felt like a natural fit to come on as a guest on the show. And we've just been through a fascinating wide-ranging chat all about like emotions and subconscious and where music might be going, how we absorb music, all that kind of stuff. Really great fun. Matt was a very open and engaging and great guest to have on, and no doubt we'll have him back on in the future. So enough of me rambling. Enjoy the show, and if you want to be a guest as well, just check out the sign up link that's around somewhere. You'll find it, I'm sure. As I say, enjoy the show and feel supersonic. Hello, welcome to this week's episode of the Soundtrack of Your Life. You know what this show's all about now. This is where we share the stories in life, or people, or events, or scenarios, or moments that have interspersed with music that's been in and around your life as well. So songs, bands, albums, soundtracks, theme tunes, anything goes on this show. I believe we've all got stories to tell when it comes to that kind of thing, so this is exactly the show where you can do just that. I'm very excited and pleased to have on this week's show Matt Travis. Matt and I haven't been in contact for that long in our network. We've been connected by a mutual friend of ours, Brian Campbell, who's on the show previously. But it was very clear straight away that we shared a great rapport. Some of the things we do in the coaching space are similar in terms of like mindset, working with subconscious. And I always want to get this bit correct. Matt is someone who helps service-based solopreneurs increase their impact and their income via his unique system. Got some very cool things going on, and when we chatted about the podcast, having him on, he's like, music is one of my big things and passions, so like, do you know what, natural fit to be on the show. So Matt, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. This is so cool. And when I heard you did a show like this, I was just super intrigued because I love everything about it. And this is definitely one of my massive passions. So I just super appreciate you having a space where we can just have an awesome conversation about music.
Absolutely. And so I say, some of the people that we've had on the show, like I always say to the guests, like, this goes where you want to. It doesn't have to be a typical Q&A. You know, I ask a question, you answer. Yeah. I've had people do impromptu rap on the show. I've had people perform on the piano. Awesome. I've had like people narrating their life story through songs and music and reliving. Like, yeah. Honestly, it's some of the, I say we all get a kick of both telling the story and hearing the stories. We love stories, right? Yeah. It doesn't have to be confined to bedtime as kids. It's like, well, everyone loves a story. What's a film? It's a story, absolutely. Right? For example. So it's like, hey, I'm more than happy to provide that space.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just ever since I was a little kid, I've always loved music, like always. It's always been a staple, always something that my father definitely was one of the first people to introduce me to some of the greats. You know, he was a big fan of The Doors and the Animals and Led Zeppelin and, you know, Jimi Hendrix, just all like the
classics.
Yeah, the classics. And when you get brought up in stuff like that, you get to really see just how it all unfolds. And of course, later in high school, so going a little bit deeper, I just got really, really, really into music. But I think one of my favorite parts about music, and what I really vibed with and was excited to kind of go into today with you, was just how, for those of you that have studied the subconscious, emotion is the language of the subconscious. And I
I love
think
that.
there's very few things like music that can really influence your subconscious in that way. And I
Yes.
didn't, of course, know that, right, until later on when I became a rapid transformation hypnotherapist and started going down that rabbit hole. Um, but I just love that. And I think that's something that you and I could have a really fun conversation about. But I'm going to just tell this story. This story is more about how I learned how important it is to, like Jim Rohn says, stand guard at the doorway of your mind when it
Uh-huh.
comes to music and when it comes to really anything.
Yeah.
But when I first moved in with my wife, um, for those of you that have ever moved in with somebody, you all of a sudden start to really get to know a person. And
Oh
you
yeah.
start to really, you know, get to know the ins and outs of their subconscious and the way that they might be. And I remember it was like a couple months in, and she started to be almost like sad and somewhat depressed and down. And I just started to question. I'm like, uh-oh, is this like what she's like all the time? I
Mm.
don't know, you know. Um, and this lasted for about a month, and she couldn't explain why it was happening and all of that. And I remember getting in her car. We were going to the grocery store. I got in the car and we were driving. Must have been, 2 to 5 minutes go by.
Mm.
And I was like, what the hell are you listening to? Because it was so sad. And for those of you that have ever heard Adele's first album,
Oh
it's
yeah.
one of the saddest, like, it's just a sad album. It reminded me a lot of like Coldplay's Rush of Blood to the Head. Like, it's
Uh-huh.
just kind of a sad album. And I was like, all right, we're done with Adele for today. And I took it. We still had CDs at this point.
Yeah.
So I took the CD out of the CD player and I put it in the case. I was like, we're going to put this away. I don't think we ever brought it back, but literally overnight, she just wasn't sad anymore. And it
Wow.
really gave me a really powerful insight as to a lot of what I went through growing up with music and how I used music as an expression you know, and how music has affected everything. I mean, it affects style, it affects literally everything, because I'm starting to learn now that it affects the subconscious
Yeah.
more than most things, right? So it's so fun. And I loved when we first connected and we were just going deep into the mindset stuff and specifically subconscious talk, and it made me really start to understand, when we're first introduced to music, like our first experiences. So I grew up, I was born in the 80s. So, that was a really interesting time for music. So anything from the 80s and before was what kind of was in my life at that time. Um, and, like I said, my father had pretty solid taste in music, all the good old stuff. And I really just was drawn to that. And then, of course, when I started to hear I was drawn to louder, harder rock, I guess. I'll never forget the first time I heard Metallica, and I was like, man,
Head blown.
what is this?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I heard Master of Puppets and then Ride the Lightning. I'm like, oh my God, this is like, where did this come from? Um, and it definitely just opened up a whole new level. And this was back when, and I was saying this to some other people the other day. I was like, it's kind of sad that kids now will never have like a record or a tape or an album that they listen to all the way through. Because back in the 80s, we had tapes, right? So, like, you
It's
didn't really
something
have
in
much of
your
a
hand.
choice. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah, you didn't have much of a choice. You just listened to it the whole way through. And, I mean, I guess you could fast forward it, but that would take time as well. So you kind of just got to experience the whole thing straight through, and then you had you could take out the lining and you could see the music and the lyrics and just the artwork and all that stuff. And I instantly fell in love with that. And it was also back when they had this, I think it was like Columbia House, or I don't know what it was, but basically you'd like give them $10 or $20 and they'd send you, and you could pick like 50 tapes or something crazy
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
And then, you remember that?
These deals knocking around. Yeah, you get a whole bunch of music, whether it's taped to a magazine or you say go to these places that will make you stuff. Yeah.
Totally. And I remember just like, because you don't really know, especially when you're a little kid, here I am, 4th, 5th grade, just like selecting all of this different tapes, and I remember they sent you all different kinds. So I got Billy Joel's We Didn't Start the Fire. I got Van Halen, Running with the Devil. I got all these different, just like random stuff. And it started to help me kind of digest and figure out what we like and what we don't like. And I think that's one of the most fascinating things. Is like, how come you are drawn to certain music and I'm drawn to certain music? What is that? It's a really fascinating thing to me, because it just kept going from there. And then, holy moly, when I finally went to like my first live show, that's when all bets were off, because it opened up a whole different level of connection and understanding of what it's like to be a kid and a teenager going through all the stuff, right? And I remember we went to this little like espresso coffee house, but it was basically a bar, but they didn't serve alcohol there. And it was back, smoking was still allowed and that type of thing. So it stunk. It smelled horrible. I remember walking in, it was so loud. The show we went to, so I live right outside of, right in between Worcester and Boston, Massachusetts. And so it was in Worcester, Massachusetts. And it was this little bar. It was called the Espresso Bar. And we went and saw this band. Their name is Sam Black Church. And there's nothing religious about it. It was hardcore, fast music.
Right.
And I remember watching this guy jump up and down and climb literally on the speakers and climb on the ceiling and hang on and I was just like, this is what I want to be a part of for the rest of my life. I remember just thinking, and it's funny because they'll never know what that show did for me. Like, they're just playing, to that. And I know people that play music have an understanding of how it does affect people, but I don't know if they truly will ever know what that moment in time did for me as a human being.
Yes.
Like, it
literally.
This is the first story of like the trajectory of my life went a totally different way, because I built a lot of my, especially when you're growing up, you build your identity around certain types of music, or I did at least, around music. And my style and everything was around music at that point. And so I ended up falling in love with rock and roll, hardcore music, punk rock. And I mean, that was even like, in the 80s and the 90s, it was like, I feel like punk rock was even still trying to figure itself out. Like, it was just trying to figure, like it was so early on. And I also just fell in love with the study of music as well. Like, just I was never somebody who played music. Like, I liked singing, but I wasn't a great singer. I liked drums, but I never fully took to it. I had really big hands, so people were like, you should try bass, but I tried guitar instead, and it never fully stuck. It's something, I think, if I were to regret something, it would probably just not, following through on the guitar and stuff like that.
You can still do it. The power of the stuff you're doing now, you can do it.
Yeah, 100%. And so ultimately, it was just all encompassing. It just took over my life. And I remember sharing this with you, and I was like, it's like the soundtrack it's like it builds the soundtrack of your life, and you're like, oh, that's the name of my
I was going to
book.
say
It's like,
that. Has she seen my
no.
podcast already? What's
I
going
was
on here?
like, no way, man. I was like, dude, let's go. And I couldn't stop thinking about it after we chatted. I was like, I really want to have this conversation with you because it's so unique and cool. And music can just really change it can shift your identity, it can shift your beliefs, it can shift your behaviors, it can shift. There's very few things that have that power over your
Mm.
subconscious programming, in my opinion, other than hypnosis or being 0 to 7 years old. Like being 0 to 7 years old, you are in pretty much a state of hypnosis, a brainwave state of hypnosis, so you're just absorbing all of the time. But music, if you, any of you that are listening, like you'll hear a song and it will bring you back to a time. It's a time machine, y'all. It's like, and in the subconscious world, we call those tracks and triggers. So it can be a good time, but it can also, like, you can listen to a song, and if it's like, let's say, you and your ex boyfriend
Yeah.
or girlfriend's song, right? It
What
can
they
bring
call it
up a
now, the
negative.
breakup song or the ugly cry song.
100%. So it can actually create a track and trigger in a negative way as well. So it's there's just so many fascinating pieces of it, right? So
I
yeah,
mean,
what were you gonna say?
I was going to say there's so much like value and jumping off points you mentioned in that, description you just gave. Like, one question that immediately came to mind is like, did you ever find out why your partner was listening to Adele? Was it a subconscious choice, or was that just through routine that I'll just hit play and that's it? Is because you say the fact that you picked up that like. Why are you feeling these kind of sadness and
Yeah,
emotion very heavy? And she felt it too. I don't really know why. It's like it's not something you've done. It's not something I've done. But you clocked it as soon as you went in the car. It's like, what is this like sad music going on here? What's going? Who died? What's going on? And
yeah.
actually linking to the end of what you were saying, like, see, I get suspicious, right, when people go, I'm not really in either. I'm not really into music, or I like
Which is
everything.
weird.
Yeah, I like everything. It's like, okay, look, I'm not here to like. I did have a history of music snobbery. I had a similar
Yeah,
kind of
me too.
story to you of like, okay, I like rock. This is the best music. Everyone else is wrong. And there was a little part of me for a little while when trying to kind
Yeah,
of disprove that. So if somebody played like a hip hop track or an R&B or a Bollywood track or whatever, I'd be like, no, sod you. Like rock and roll is
yeah,
way better. And it just didn't lead me anywhere. Um, but there is an element to that of like, I still believe that is one of the genres of rock music because it can go like see before I go into rock, it's like I think again most people still triggers me when people go, I like all music apart from rock.
mm.
Oh, okay, fine. Again, I'm not going to disprove you. I'm not going to go you wrong. But I'm like, okay, let's think. Like, you could even break it down, right? And yes, you could say that with most genres. But okay, with rock, you got hard rock, punk rock, metal, soft rock.
Yeah,
All these genres, like what they're all. Look, most of the top bands you ever know: the Beatles, Oasis,
yeah.
Queen, the Stone Roses, Rolling
Everything.
Stones,
Yeah,
Elvis, Jimi Hendrix. They're all guitar based.
yep.
Got to be some sort of thing going on there, right? But
Yeah,
in
and it
terms
goes
of
way even back further than that, right?
exactly, yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Goes to all the jazz artists,
That's
and
right. The blues
like you
movement in
can
the
go back
50s. Yeah,
forever.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. So, but what I'm getting said, do you know what? Even beyond the genres and stuff we're talking about, it's the access to the emotions that underpin them all, and they open up in you,
yeah,
right? And I've seen many an artist talk about the fact that, you know, I went like so many people of this podcast know that I'm a massive Oasis fan. And when I've seen
fair.
interviews with Noel or even with other band people, they talk about the idea that I didn't write this song specifically about me or my experiences or an emotion. People are
Yeah,
left to interpret the meaning of whatever they want it to mean for them. So
totally.
one of his most famous examples, or two of the most famous examples, is "Don't Look Back in Anger" and "Live Forever." So "Don't Look Back in Anger" is like people like he goes. There can be people that cry their heart out to the song, or there are people that say, oh, "I get defiance from it." There's a very poignant usage of it when a few years ago there was an attack at the Manchester Arena, Ariana Grande concert. You know, there's,
Yeah.
22 people, you know, lost their lives. And in the vigil that followed after, there's a clip on the news that went viral everywhere where it was just quiet, everybody, not a word being said, just reflecting. And then just one voice just started singing the chorus to Don't Look Back in Anger. And then everybody else just followed suit.
Wow.
And then Noel watched it, went, if I'd have known that that song would have been used for this kind of moment and not predicting tragedy,
really,
is
right?
like, but what he said is, I would have never finished the song. I would have never been able to finish it.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, when you live forever, people assume that must be about you and your partner. It's like, no, it's about you and your best friend.
Yeah.
It sounds like a coupley thing, and you know, you and I are going to live forever, and we see things I'll never see. It's like, it's about you and your best mate rocking up, having a drink, whatever, and going, do you know what? We will live forever. So he's like, I leave it up to the person to decide it. And the emotions, it's like, I still look at that kind of music and go, do you know what? I can tap into every emotion inside me through that kind of music. And that's the one, that's the real wonder of it. And just before 100%. We came on, I was actually reading about anchoring in the world of NLP, where it literally speaks about the idea that when you get into a heightened emotional state, and you form an anchor with something, whether it's a touch or a sense, whatever, you interlink the two. The most visceral example I think of music is your first dance at a wedding. When your first dance is going on, you're looking at your partner, you've got the atmosphere, you've got the people, the venue, and you pick the song for a specific moment. So in future, when you hear the song elsewhere, as you said, you're taken straight back to your wedding night.
100%.
And they're all, and these examples are all over the place in our world. That's why I always say about the show, it's not just about songs, it's about bands, it's tracks, it's theme tunes, it's soundtracks, it's adverts, everywhere, absolutely everywhere.
And it's like, it makes me kind of sad that kids kind of just hear all like music on shuffle all the time now.
Yeah.
Like you know, like I'm guilty of it too. My kids will just like listen to whatever, you know, like a mix on Spotify or whatever it is, right? And it's just like, they'll never know. I think I need to be better. Actually, after this podcast, one of my to-dos is be better about playing full albums for my children. You know, it's just so that they know what you know, like, because you know, when you come across like a full album that's just a masterpiece, that you're like, man, this thing was just put together so well, and like every song is amazing. Like,
and it's in a specific order. It's in a specific order, it might have a narrative. Or the idea is to say it's not just listen to that track. It's the whole thing. Like,
totally.
Do you think that's a lost art nowadays? Like, I know the consumption patterns have changed and all that kind of thing, but.
Well, you know, growing up, I remember, because I had literally thousands and thousands of tapes and probably about 100,000 CDs, like crazy amount.
Wow.
And I saved them all, and I like, you know, I kept them all, and my brain was thinking nostalgically like, oh, I'll be able to show my kids these someday, and they'll be so excited. But like literally, they're just like, I have that on my phone, you know, like that. I don't know if they'll ever like appreciate that to the level that I did. You know, that was what I spent all my money and all my time on, that and shows. Like, it was just like, that was what what it was always my saving grace. I mean, music saved my life. Period.
Yeah.
Like, there's no doubt about it, 100%. And so, you know,
that's a powerful line in itself.
100, totally. Well, I think of like when I grew up with a lot of learning disabilities, and I always felt like I had to try harder than a lot of the other kids, and it definitely was the beginning of like my issues with enoughness, and that whole complex, which I worked through the first 3 decades of my life. But music was always the place where I could go back to and feel like me and feel connected, and like it's kind of like a best friend that just gets you, right? They just get you, and they just know. And
that's a great way to put it.
Press play, you know? And so like I remember, you know, going to shows after that. I was pretty much into everything. I mean, we would go to hip hop shows, we would go to hardcore shows, rock shows, all amazing music, in especially, you know, during the 90s, especially when I was going to a lot of this stuff. It was just like a really, really fun time.
Yeah.
It was just really fun. It was just so cool. It was before cell phones, so you would go to a
Yeah.
show and
Yeah. Actually
there would be
watch the show,
nobody
not
like
just.
holding up a phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd be there. You'd be at the show, and that's all you could do, right? You were just there. No one was recording it. Like it was just you were there and you were part of it. Um, but it got me through hands down some of the hardest times of my life, and I even definitely started to. It's funny, like I started to be, embody the punk rock mindset where I'd had spikes all over the place, mohawk, caged
Nice.
earrings, lip ring, all that stuff. And it's funny because looking back at that young version of me, it was me trying to find my identity and my
Of
way
course.
through the world, right? And thinking back now, it's like that's a style. Like punk is a style, and a lot of people that dress like that, they're trying. And I was talking to my friend who would go to the hardcore shows and punk shows with me, and I was saying we were the type of kids that we were wearing our basically the way that music makes you feel, but we were able to express it in the way we looked on the outside, like
Yes.
what was going on the inside.
Oh,
And a lot of
absolutely.
people, yeah, a lot of people have a misconception, in my opinion, of what that music. They think it's angry. It's actually
Finally,
right.
someone else said it.
So I have found that it's actually what makes me calm. It's a weird thing. It either focuses me or calms me. And when COVID hit, I had to take like 2 years off from going to shows, and I realized I genuinely missed, because I'm a bigger guy. I'm like 6'4", 215. So I'll go down and I'll literally get in the pit and I'll play with the kids, and I genuinely like the sway and the breath of the crowd, like just being part of it and just like literally being pushed and being pulled and being part of it and literally feeling it on so many levels. And uh and yeah, when COVID took that away, right, like took away human connection and human
Hmm.
touch, I think a lot of us, well, I know many people had, because that's when I started doing hypnotherapy with people. Many people had a very adverse reaction, because music also connects us more than most things ever, like
Yes.
more than almost anything. I always explain it to my clients when I'm talking to them about like niching down and speaking to one person
Hmm.
or one kind of person. I explain it like when you watch those like singing shows and you watch how the person gets on stage, they're like, what's your name, and what are you going to sing, and they go through, my name's this, I'm going to sing this, and they're like, who are you here with, and like this is what will happen. They'll be like, well, I wanted my mom to be here, but she's in the hospital or whatever it is, and that they'll like pan to the crowd, and there'll be a seat with no one in it, and then they go back to the singer, right, and the singer will do their song, and literally they're singing, and then the whole crowd is crying,
Uh
right,
huh.
the whole crowd is crying, but the singer's actually only singing to that one person. They're singing to their mom, right,
Yeah.
or they're singing to their dad,
Yeah.
or singing to that one person. But the thing is that the interpretation of your emotions, which is feelings, folks, that's what feelings are, right, is felt by everybody. And that's, just like a neat little like way to explain why it's so important to speak to one person, because when you speak to one person, you're going to be able to make a difference and actually improve your marketing and sales systems, but everyone else is going to get something out of it as well, right?
That
And
is
that's
a
the same
brilliant
way music
example.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For that very reason, you say what you take is actually down to you. It's not the
Totally.
source. It's you. Now, as you
100%.
said, the singer on stage is it's their, yes, they're here for an audition or to get through the next round or whatever it might to impress the judges, yada yada. But as you said, they've got a personal story behind it. It's their anchor. Maybe a song that
Yeah,
really connects them to that person. But the
totally.
crowd see it as like, okay, it's a expression, and also that emotion is also in me as well. We've all
Yeah.
got, we've all got access to all the emotions, right? So,
Yeah.
and another equivalent of from the media is like a film. You go to film, someone might cry at a moment. You're like, what are you crying about? But that
Yeah.
whatever going on in the film, touch them. But for you, it's like,
Sure.
okay, that's not really my thing. But you're right in that regard. Music, I think, is such a unique ability to touch in on those emotions that we've got. So as you said, when people go, oh, rock music is angry and it's loud and it's intimidating, that's hard. You're kind of missing the point. If you're
Yeah.
talking about, the technicalities of, music, like loudness and instrumentation and yada yada yada, you could
Yeah.
critique every genre in that regard, in
Totally.
whatever manner. But I think, what you sometimes miss is like, okay, take I use the example of Iron Maiden,
Perfect
loud heavy
example.
metal band, but
Yeah.
the actual storytelling behind their songs is crazy.
It's
It's like this massive,
it's
long,
it's,
ancient
it's
tale.
so impressive.
Yeah, and it's and they interweave the musicianship, the
Totally.
vocal delivery, and then their visual delivery. With Eddie, their mascot, and their stage shows, and all this kind of. It's an art form. So
Some of the
people,
metal guitarists
oh
like are literally just like some of the best musicians of all time.
yes,
My
yes,
cousin,
yes,
he's a metal guitarist, and like it literally just it's just art. It's like, how do
yeah,
you do that? How
yeah,
do you even think like that, right? I think that's what blew my mind with Metallica, because it was like, man, what is this? It's almost like opera, but not like, but like hard, like a hard version of, you know? And then, yeah, like you have, man, I love this. Thanks for making this podcast,
No,
man.
you're very smoking. This is
It's
exactly what the show's
awesome.
about. We just share
It's
stories and
so
stuff like
good. It's
that.
basically
Yeah,
just two dudes geeking out.
it is. That's the point. That's why I say to people, you don't have to, be a musician or have a history of it
Yeah,
or work in music. Like, we all tap into music. As I said, it will come from anywhere. And for some that go, oh, I'm struggling, something will be there. And that the people that get naturally attracted
yeah,
to the show and the idea, is because we formed those anchors. We have visceral stories of a person,
yeah,
an event, anything that goes on, right? But come back to what you're saying about kids nowadays with access to technology, and they don't listen to an album straight through. I guess one you know silver lining we could have to that is it's expanded the possibilities of what we can
access.
consume, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I'm stemming away from the AI side of things, so I know that's like, it's not controversial, but it's like, okay, that's a thing now. What
yeah,
would it be like if Freddie Mercury sang Imagine, for example? I don't know. All these people making stuff like that, and it's like, okay, that's actually
yeah.
not bad. What I mean is, like, we just talked about metal and metal guitaring, right? There's a chap on YouTube, just an ordinary guy, but he takes like classical pieces of music and plays them out in metal form, not just like
Super
a
cool.
note for note interpretation, but he'll add his own like improvised bit in the middle. It's like,
Yeah,
you physically shouldn't be able to do that, like the with his left hand, and then he doesn't like play the string one by one with his right hand. He goes and like he does his
totally.
kind of like tap the string. Like, how are you doing that? And
Yeah,
it's like one of the, like, was it Beethoven's Ninth he did, and a Mozart piece, like they're like 5 minutes length, and it's like he's knackered at the end of it. But it's like, wow, just the wow.
absolutely. There's this funny video I came across. It's like, if when Beethoven came out with his his symphony, and like you you were in your car with your buddies and it dropped, like the album dropped,
Yeah,
and you were like, dun, 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 dun. You're
yeah.
like,
Well,
what, bro? Like you're
and the guy's
losing your
deaf.
mind with your friends in the car. you know but it's funny to think like that. It's interesting because, yeah, like I said, I never really I didn't get deep into playing instruments,
Mm.
but I remember being like, I want to go to school for production. I want to be a music producer. That was like one of the first things I remembered wanting to be. And I remember my parents like ixnayed it right away, like, and we're like, no, we're not doing it, blah blah blah. We're not paying for that, blah blah blah, all
Uh-huh.
that stuff. And but that was when the movie Almost Famous came out, and
Right.
I remember watching Almost Famous and being like, man, maybe I could just write I could literally just go to shows and write and just be a music journalist. And that's what I could do. And I was 100% sold on that idea. And it was interesting. I mean, I was building my whole life around that thought process. And I went to college, and my freshman year, my focus was communications and journalism, and with the hopes of becoming a music writer. And there's times in your life where there's those moments that just change everything. And I remember my professor at the time, he called me into his office during office hours, and he said, you're a great writer, and you're doing wonderful in my class, and if you're really serious about this, you should look into a different school, because this school isn't necessarily big into journalism. It's you should go to Boston College or Boston University. And I remember that changed the trajectory of my life forever. I mean, literally, I walked out of his office kind of defeated a little bit, because I was like, man, like and it's interesting because he prefaced it with a big compliment, like, you're really good at this and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, but you just remembered the bit after the but.
Well, the but was the fact that he was like, be Boston College or Boston University, and I was going to Keene State College, and it was just like, that wasn't even an option money-wise to do that type of shift. So I actually ended up going into the physical world and physical education and health and nutrition and all that stuff. So that was kind of what led me into that world and the evolution of what I did later on. But it's really interesting how you can try to almost build your life around something, right? Yeah. And in a moment, it can shift drastically. But music has always been, even though that moment in time changed the trajectory of my life, it didn't change it didn't affect music for me at all. And music has, time after time, moment after moment, anything that's come up for me in my life, it's always helped me get through the tough times, the good times, the bad times. I love watching my children, my 10-year-old and 6-year-old, and I've loved watching them love music and dance and just vibe to it. And like my littlest one, he just will dance, and I'm like, where does this rhythm come from? Like, it just is in his body. Like, it's in him, it's part of him. Like, he's one of those kids that I could see getting him turntables and being a DJ or some sort, because that's just like what he vibes to that. And his name is Jude.
Course, that's an awesome name for a music-based thing.
Straightforward. And literally, I'll never forget the night we decided on his name. I was watching Across the Universe on TV and one of those channels, and I remember just being like, and that version of Hey Jude in that movie is really, really, really cool. And I remember walking into my wife, she was in bed already. I walked in, I said, what do you think of Jude? And she goes, yeah, that was one of the ones that was on my list. I was like, done. And that's our son, Jude. I also was a teacher for 18 years, so you have to pick names of kids you've never had. And I never had a Jude.
Good shout. So good shout. And thing. Also probably you don't want to overcomplicate a name. Like, mine is like, my culture has a lot of exotic sounding, very rich names, but you're like, there's no way like a Western mouth or tongue is going to get around that. So, nice as it is, and keeping it simple.
And he gets sung to all the time. Absolutely. Everyone does the Hey Jude to him for sure. And that's cool. And that's the cool thing. And it's, what's also funny about that, and I told my wife later another story. I remember we went I'm in the States, but we drove to Toronto when I was in college to see the Chemical Brothers in Toronto. Nice. And it was really cool. And after the show, we went to a bar, and it was so funny because at the bar, the jukebox got stuck on Hey Jude, and it's not a bad tune to get stuck on because
Oh,
literally,
no,
this is
not at
all these
all.
drunk people.
Yeah.
It's and every 5 minutes we would always be like, nah, nah,
Na, na, na. Well,
nah, nah,
I
nah,
wonder if that's
right?
intentional. The bar's like, I'm just going to stick that on
Yeah,
there because
every
it's going to
night he
make
gets
people
stuck
stay on.
on
Like,
me.
oh, I'll get another round in. I'll get another beer for this mate here. Honestly, it could be a tactic, right? Yeah,
Genius mode, right? Like, yeah, and that stuck with me forever. And I was like, that song never got old to me because
timeless.
it always felt good. It always felt strong, and I named my child after it. So, uh, yeah,
But again,
there's
if you listen to how the the story behind Paul writing it, it was to uh, John Lennon's son. That your
yeah,
parents are breaking up, and this is just
yeah,
obviously him and his
make him feel
John
better.
and Paul are mates, and it's like it's
Yeah,
for him, and even
totally.
Jude Lennon today's like I wouldn't even grasped or known that, right? But
No,
see,
no.
people have taken it on to whatever meaning they want to. Is it I think those we were lucky to grow up with that kind of music, and obviously it's still around, but there's just a timeless quality to it. It's a question I
Yeah,
posed on this podcast before of like, have we seen the last of what you deem as like legends or timeless artists? Like, look, there are big artists today, no doubt. I've mentioned the likes of you mentioned Coldplay.
yeah.
I've mentioned like Taylor Swift on this show before,
Oh,
and you're like,
she's a beast. She's one of the best business minds
absolutely,
of the
she's a
world,
machine. It's
right?
a machine, right?
Yeah,
The whole thing.
yeah,
But we're here, what, 50 years later, talking about the Beatles?
100%.
Are,
Yeah,
are, are we?
and
I
you
mean, is the same
also,
going to be said in the future? I don't
yeah,
know.
and that'll be, and this is, I love that you posed that question because that's the shit I think about. Like that's
It's
literally
true.
like I think about this type of stuff all of the time. I'm like, how did the iPod change music forever? Like, how
Yeah.
did it change the way we listen and absorb music? And like, how does it change? Yeah, it literally changed everything like
Yeah.
that. Like it
Yes.
changed everything. And I remember having a Walkman and then a
Yeah.
Discman, and kids will never know what it's like to have your music skip, like or
Yeah.
get eaten by a machine.
That's
you know,
right. And it's like
like
they spend hours painstakingly trying to get out and make sure the tape doesn't rip, or you try and buff your CD to
uh,
get a scratch out or whatever. It's like, well, it must be
totally.
working. It worked yesterday. What's going on here? Or
Remember the
or your
original?
or the battery's running out in your Walkman. You're down there and you're like, oh fucking hell.
It's literally. Remember the original download? Like it was like you would listen to the radio to hear your favorite song, and you would try to catch it right at the
Play and
right
record.
time.
Yeah.
And you always got like a snippet, a little piece of the commercial,
Yeah.
and then from then on out, anytime you'd hear that commercial, you'd be like, "Oh, my favorite song's coming on after."
Exactly. Or you get annoyed because like you caught the moment perfectly, and some DJ rambles in the middle. It's like, shut up!
Yep,
I
yep.
waited all
Get
like day
off
for this
there.
to hit play and record, and you're bungling it up in the middle. You twat, get out. But that was an
Yeah,
art form, honestly. To catch it at the right moment,
totally,
right time. If you've got
totally.
loaded tape, you're not recording over something you don't want to be recording over. I say people might laugh and go, yeah, we don't have that anymore. It's literally any song, you've got it in 2 seconds through whatever
Two
platform
seconds.
you've got. The convenience is awesome, don't get me wrong, but there's something. Look, that was a little story we just said, right? Because we can think back to so many instances, and it just added to it
Yeah,
all. I don't know if I've said it on this show before, probably have, but I got into the music I am into nowadays by my Walkman because I don't know what it
totally.
did. I don't know what it did, right? But it always used to play songs in one key higher. It was a completely ordinary Walkman. Maybe it's the way the actual tape was, whatever. But I'd listen to it on the
Yeah,
radio, and it's like, okay, there's that key, and then I'll play it on my Walkman. Why has it just gone up a notch? I don't know. But I
that's
listened
so
to.
funny.
I don't know why, but I played certain rock songs to it. It's like, whoa, it'd just be I remember it was just a chord. A chord got played, like, whoa, that just like, this is
Maybe it
gonna.
was like maybe it just moved faster. Maybe it moved the tape just a little bit quicker.
Possibly,
Yeah, who
possibly. I never
knows?
figured it out,
Yeah,
but I'm like, I just got hooked in it. Just that sound, just like a chord. Like, okay, this is gonna
awesome.
sound immense. And I would replay the tape again and again, and that's it. You know, you mentioned gateway before. Perfect word for like, oh my god, all of a sudden I'm into this band. Oh, then they're into that one, then that one, then that one, then that, and it just opened up. And this is obviously before the days of the internet and stuff like that.
Yep.
You know, did you ever do file sharing? I don't know if anyone's listening.
Yeah,
like Napstar and LimeWire, all that kind of shit.
That was big. Like right when I got into college, I went to college in 2001, and that was huge. You know, in 2000, 2001, it was huge.
Yeah.
Right. But it's interesting because like basically that's what that's what all this stuff did. That's what Pandora and Spotify and all of them did anyway. I mean, it basically just took all your favorite songs, put them in this one spot, right?
Yeah.
So I think basically they just went with what was happening with the times anyways.
Yeah,
it was like,
it's naturally the opportunity was going to get taken, wasn't it?
Yeah. And that's really sad too. And that's one of the things that I hope that musicians are taken care of, in a sense where, you know, they, because, you know, who knows what it's like to be a musician nowadays, and to not, you know, necessarily sell, you know, an album in a store, right? Like when I go to record stores now and like, you know, CD stores, it's just like so cool to bring my kids into them, and I'm like, guys, this is what I used to do with all of my money.
And it's like, why don't you just get Spotify? It's like,
didn't exist, bro.
Exactly. But yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that because, as you said, like I don't know whether like musicians go into it for the money, etc. You know, a lot of them, I think it's a natural byproduct. Their success. They go out to in the mean to be. We want to be the biggest band and all this kind of thing. But I think, you know, it just seems like today there's so much legality or like, you know, legal speak or fighting this, and you know, like, you know, Ed Sheeran's been in and out of court so many times now for like, oh, he copied my song and he did this and he did that. Taylor Swift, didn't she re-release her whole catalogue going, well, if they're not going to give you my proper cut, well, I'll re-record them and send them on my own thing. And it's like,
well, what happened to her was dark, man. Like she
no doubt,
she got
the business
caught
side
into some stuff, you know. And I think that's that's also the music industry, right? And,
that's it.
And you know, it's just kind of like, it's like all you know, all industries have their ups and downs, right? Their ins and outs. And but boy, am I grateful for the ability to you know, have had tapes and CDs and records and all that stuff in my life. Just, you know, I genuinely know that I would not be the same person, and I wouldn't be the coach, the mentor, the father, the husband, the brother, you know, I wouldn't be the person I am without it. It changed everything, and it's made it so that, I'm still here. That's the coolest thing. Is like, it kept me here, and I'm just genuinely grateful for it. And I think it's awesome that you've created this place where people can come on and geek out about this stuff, because it's changed so much. I have a question for you. And this is going to be a super hard question.
Okay.
What if you could think of one song that changed your life, like, and it might not be your favorite song, but it's a song that changed your life or saved you in some way, shape, or form, what would that song be?
Oh, goodness gracious. There's three, because you said it in three different ways, I came up with three different songs. So I'll try and answer in all three forms, right? So the song that I call it my default song is Oasis Supersonic.
Love it.
It's Noel himself says there's not one other song like Supersonic in the Oasis catalogue. He also, if you look at the origins of the song, to cut a long story short, Oasis were recording the first album, and they needed a song to show their record manager of their progress that was going on. And they were trying to record one of the songs that was already on the album, but they just could not get the drumming right. And the band were like, shit, what are we going to do? So all the rest of the band went off to get some Chinese takeaway, and Noel was in the studio. And he said, I just literally sat in a corner and I wrote Supersonic in 4 minutes. And then when the rest of the band got back, he said, right, come in this room. And then he showed, right, you play that, you do this. And they were like, yeah, pick it up.
So cool.
And then they recorded the song in one take, and that's the version here on the album. He's like, I've never done that again. I don't know where it came from. I don't even get the right guitar tone on another song. But aside from the story, it's like I hear that song and I instantly feel 10 feet tall. It's the instrumentation, it's the swagger, it's the lyrics. I need to be myself. I can't be no one else. Like, any sort of state or emotion I'm in, if I played that song, brings me straight back to no, this is me. As for a song that saved my life, it's another song by Noel Gallagher. This time not of Oasis, but his own band now, the High Flying Birds, called Fort Knox. And Fort Knox came on his third album. And you know, you were saying before, of like, you're so grateful to be in this kind of music, and it's like impacted you like in so many different ways and places. I was going to add to that, saying I feel that music or song, whatever it is, finds you. You know, you didn't have to actively find. I didn't feel you have to actively seek that kind of music. Wherever state you're in, it finds you. Now, Fort Knox did that for me to save my life physically. So I went on a skiing holiday in Christmas 2017, and it's the shittest thing I've ever done. Hands down, the crappiest, shittest, counterintuitive thing I did. I went out there because of a group mentality. Oh, everybody else is going, I might as well come along. And then all the time my head was going, I'm not a cold person. I don't like the snow. Skiing, I've never had any ambition whatsoever. What the fuck am I doing? Why am I here? And, you know, I went along with it. I just could not take to it. You know, everybody else got into it, like, oh, this is how you do it. The bodily movements were just counterintuitive. I just couldn't get it. And I felt so alone in that regard. Wasn't anybody's fault. I'm not blaming. It's not meant to be a sob story, but it's like I just felt so isolated and shit. And also that real fear, like if I get something wrong, I'm going to break something, or even worse, just literally do a Wile E. Coyote and ski off the side of the mountain, and that I'm done. That's it. And no one can stop me. No one can literally stop you. But through all that mix of stuff going on, you know, Noel's album came out at that time, and Fort Knox is a song that has only 2 lyrics in it. It's the 2 lyrics are keep holding out, holding on, and you got to get yourself together. Repeated, and he's got a female vocalist. He's got a female vocalist. You're like, what? Where's Noel getting a female vocalist from? And he's got an alarm clock going through the whole song. And even now, when I go back to that moment, if I'm, you know, in my shadow or wherever, I play Fort Knox and I go, that was literally something that's... the reason I say it saved my life in that regard is like, it just took me out of all the shit going on. And it's like, just keep holding out, holding on, and get yourself together. So, you know, I didn't ski off a mountain, otherwise I wouldn't be here. But when someone says, what a song that saves your life, takes me to Fort Knox. And lastly, when... so, this isn't saving my life, but this is a song that runs throughout my existence is You'll Never Walk Alone by Jerry and the Pacemakers. Big Liverpool football fan. But something I do every morning is outside my door, I've got the lyrics to You Never Walk Alone on my facing wall. And before I go, like, you know, downstairs and start the day and all this kind of stuff, I literally just look at the lyrics. Now, in my head, I might sing them. I might vocally speak them in my mind. It might be somebody else's voice who I don't know, someone it might be. But the you know, it takes me to obviously Liverpool and the football, but just the message in the song, you know, I'm picking bits out here, but it's just a concurrent thing I come back to, and when you see it sung at the match, it just takes me to a whole new... that's probably another whole episode I could talk about, but you know, when you phrase the question in three manners, I'm like, if you'd stopped at like, what's the song in your life, I'd have said Supersonic. When he said save your life, Fort Knox, I said something through your life, You Never Walk Alone.
Yeah, I love it. I love how it evolved to something totally different. And Yeah, man, this has been such a special experience, and I just want to thank you for having me and allowing me to just, yeah, geek
No,
out for
absolute pleasure. And
an
like,
hour.
look, when a guest is this enthusiastic and engaging, it just makes my life easy, right?
Yeah, it's not
Honestly,
hard to shoot
I
your
always say
shot.
to people, like, I've literally, I'll introduce you, I'll switch the mic to you. As we said before I recorded, I said, this is how it works. Don't expect me to just sit here
Yeah.
firing questions like an interviewer, what does it, I read, is it Musk that, interviewed Trump the other day? I've no idea. I just saw it on the news. I didn't see anything of it. But it's like, it's not an interview. It's a conversation, and we all love it, right? So when someone else gets the enthusiasm, it's like, yeah, this is. That's why people come on. That's why I get people on that want to,
Totally.
So look, I'd love to have you on again. I'm sure we could delve into um, even more stuff. Um,
I love it, man.
yeah. Um, yeah. Any closing thoughts or things you wanted to make
Oh,
before we finish
it
up?
could go on for hours, man. It could, it could literally go on for hours.
We really could, really could. Yeah, I was going to say, like, any final
Yeah,
thoughts you'd like to
I
give?
guess, if any musicians, yeah, if any musicians are listening, I just want to thank you for being you and spending. People don't, they never look at like the amount of time and effort that it goes into learning the music, right? Learning how to play an instrument, learning how to sing, learning how to gel as a band. And just like any other business, me being an entrepreneur, I know what it's like to push through the trials and tribulations of growing a profession and what you choose to do here on the planet. But just always, I always say to my clients, the reason I wake up, what gets me up is the quote that Bob Marley said. And the quote goes like this: is basically, for those of you that don't know Bob Marley, he's, one of the biggest reggae stars of all time, right? But he was about to play at one of the transformational shows ever in Jamaican history. And it was going to unite the political parties. And of course, someone didn't want that to happen. So he got shot 2 times, and he was hospitalized. And 2 days later, he checked himself out, and he went on to play the show. And when he went to play the show, he brought on the two opposing parties, and he had them join hands on stage. And it was just like one of those moments that will go down in history as just
Seminal.
like, yeah, unbelievably life changing. And then the media asked him, after, like, why did you do this? Why did you check yourself out? Like, and he said this, and this, I think about this every morning when I wake up. He said, the people that are trying to make this world worse aren't taking a day off. So why should I? He said, light up the darkness. And that's why I'm on this planet. I'm on this planet to light up the darkness. And I know if you're a musician, or you just are in this and you're trying to make this your life, you're doing the same thing. And I thank you for continuing to do that, because it makes it so that all of us keep on going when it feels so freaking hard to keep going. So that's my little last final thought.
That's an amazing quote. I actually hadn't heard that before, but I think it's an amazing way to put things. He was someone that you could feel the joy from his music, right? And not just the joy, but the trying, as you say, bring everybody together, and it is probably one of the single most artists or songs that spring to mind when you think of unity and togetherness in that manner. And thanks for sharing that quote. It's an amazing one. Matt, this has been such a brilliant conversation. As you said, like, it could go on for hours. And I would definitely love you to come back on the show. Do you just want to give a shout to where people can find you if they want to get in touch with what you do and all that kind of stuff? I'm not sure if that last bit came to. I was saying,
Yeah.
Oh, I think you did.
Yeah, absolutely. So my company is called The Potential You.
Cool.
Yeah. So the potential you, it's with the letter U, and it's so at the potential you or thepotentialyou.com, and you can always find me on Facebook or Instagram. And I just genuinely love helping people, so you can connect with me directly and send me a message and anything. I'm here to light up the darkness, like I said, and yeah, I wish you all the best, and thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Matt. Well, thank you as well to watch and listen to the show. If you want to come on the show, just, as I say, just drop me a message or check out the sign up link on the forum wherever you're watching or listening to this. Thank you again to Matt, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Thank you so much for checking out this episode of Soundtrack of Your Life. I hope you enjoyed it. Please do like and share this episode around. Subscribe to the channel for further shows coming up. Comment with your thoughts below and use the sign up link to get yourself on the shows on. I'd love to have you on. Feel supersonic.